Hello, YouTube, and today we're going to be learning how to, play catch with yourself in Blender. So I just made this VFX shot. It is actually very, very simple to do. Um, uh, so let's just get started. So here is, well, first of all, I'm going to find the location of, here is the footage I shot. So as you can see, I'm playing catch with my mom. So we take one take right here, and then we switch spots and do the exact same thing. Perfect. And the real magic right here is the key part of this is we didn't just film it just out of the blue. As you can see, my phone's right here, and earlier I did an audio recording of me saying just like 3, 2, 1, go. 3, 2, 1, go. And I used that in this video while I was shooting it. I was playing it so I could like time it correctly. So we would each throw the ball and go. So if I turn the volume up, you might be able to you even might be able to hear it. So listen. And I use that same audio recording for both takes. So the timings would be the same. So the first step is what we're going to do is open up our video editing application of choice. I'm using DaVinci Resolve. You can use whatever you want. I recommend using Resolve though, because it's free and good. And we're just going to drag in our footage, and we're going to hit change. So now we have our footage in there, and we're just going to drag it onto our timeline. I'm just going to mute this so it's like not painful to listen to me and this recording at the same time. And I'm just going to turn off my air conditioning if you hold on 1 second. Oh, it's a hot day today. And I am on a continuous loop of turning my air conditioning on and off, so I don't waste electricity. But anyway, back to this. So I'm just going to trim this, trim both the takes to right about there. So maybe to like there actually. You can trim it to wherever you want. I just want mine to be nice and short. Right there. So now I'm going to speed up towards where we start the next take. Okay, let's... And I'm just going to cut it there. Great. And I'm just going to cut the end off too. There. So now I'm going to put one on top of the other like this. But now we have the two on top of each other, but the problem is they're not timed. So what we need to do is we need to time them up. And as you know, I have we have that background audio of me of the audio recording for timings, like the 3, 2, 1, go thing. So we can just line those two up, and then the two clips will be lined up. So I'm going to switch to this view so we can see the audio waves, and I unmuted both of these. So I'm just going to turn up the volume a bit. And they're actually pretty close already. So I'm just going to... I think this, the one that's on the top, is a bit before the one that's on the bottom. So I'm just going to zoom in a bit on the timeline and just ever so slightly move it over. And now I can't even distinguish between the two. Perfect. So we've got these. Oops, why did I flag all these? I don't use DaVinci Resolve that often, it's just weird to me. But now if I go back to this view, now they're all the same length, and I'm just going to cut off a bit of the end right here. So we got these on top of each other, but they don't look very in sync. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this top one, and I'm going to crop off half of it. So if I see this crop left right here, I'm going to crop off a bunch of the left of it. And right here, as you can see, it kind of looks like a sharp line. It's not too bad. And the way we can fix that is just with a little bit of softness. And what softness does is it just, well, it's what it sounds. It adds a bit of softness between just adds a bit of softness, so it doesn't look as weird. And we're just going to add a little bit, because if we add a lot, it might screw with the with what we do later. So now what we have is this, which is already pretty close to our final result. So I can just play this. And that looks about good. But now we're going to do the fancy stuff. We're going to take this into Blender. I actually have a naming scheme for when I do VFX shots. So this, you don't need to name it the same file name, but I'm going to call it SRC Composite 1. And that's just my naming scheme. I'm saying this is the source video. It's composited. I mean, I don't know if this counts as compositing, but I just call it compositing. And it's the first composite. I'm just going to set this to MP4, and I'm going to pick a location. I'm just going to save it to this folder, and I'm just going to render it out. Looks great. I'm not going to save this because I don't think I'll need it later. But next we're going to open up Blender, and what we're going to do is we're going to turn this into an image sequence. So I'm going to be doing most of this stuff in Blender, and Blender can handle image sequences much better than it can handle video files. So I'm going to take that video that I just exported, SRC Composite 1. I'm just going to drag it into a Blender video editing workspace. And as you can see, this is 189 frames. So I'm just going to set the end frame to 189. So now it's just now when we render this out, it'll render only the video, and it won't render anything other than it. So it's actually got the frame rate correct. It's 29.97. I'm going to switch this to JPEG because I would rather not fill up my SSD on my computer. And I click that button right here, and I'm going to choose an output directory. So I'm going to just pick a folder. Where is it? Right here. So I'm just going to create a new folder to render this out to. It's going to be called, I still have a naming scheme, so it will be SRC Composite 1, and then, oops, yeah, and then, oops, how can I rename this? But anyway, actually, I screwed up a bit, but it's supposed to be called SEQ for sequence. So it's just my naming scheme, you don't have to use it. But I'm just going to choose that output directory. I'm going to change this to one sample, because that's all I need. And yeah, so now when I click Control F12, it actually started rendering on a separate monitor, but it's going through it really fast. And if I go to that directory, it's saving all of the images as an image sequence. It's doing it very fast. So it's already done, 189 pictures. So if you've never used an image sequence before, it's just, you know, like videos are a sequence of images, and so it actually turns it into a sequence of images. And yeah, so that works. Now we're going to do some compositing. going to open up Blender, and instead of doing a video editing workspace, we're going to open up a general workspace. And we're going to change this right here to a movie clip editor. And this is where we're going to be doing all our tracking and masking. So we have our image sequence right here, and we're going to select all of it with Control A, and we're going to drag this into our movie clip editor, whatever. So we're just going to take this off screen. So now we just need to do a couple of things. We need to click set scene frames, and this automatically sets the scene frames. So it starts at 1, ends at 189. And now we're just going to hit prefetch. And that just loads all of the frames into memory so we get smoother playback. Okay, so now if we play it, we're getting it's doing great, and this is the image sequence. It looks a bit slow actually, and that's because the project is set to 24 frames per second, and the footage was shot at 30 frames per second. So I'm just going to change this over to 30. It was actually 29.97, so I'm going to change it to that. So yeah, that is looking great. So the kind of approach we're going to do is we're going to completely erase this ball, the real ball that's in the air, and we're going to replace it with a digital ball. So the first step to taking out this ball is we need to just know where it is. So if you've never, I'm assuming you know what how to do tracking, motion tracking, but if you don't, I'm just going to give a general overview. This is set to location, which is good. Yeah, I'm going to change the correlation to 0.9, which means it will need like 90% confidence that the track is correct. And I'm just going to, we're not going to actually be doing a lot of motion tracking. We're going to do most of it manually because this ball has so much motion blur, it would just be a nightmare to track it like automatically. So we're just going to do most of this manually. So we're going to choose a frame where it's like pretty far away from my hand. So I'm going to choose this frame right here. So it's completely left my hand. So what I'm going to do is I zoom in on it, and I'm going to add a tracker by hitting Control and click. And that adds a tracker. And I'm just going to make this a bit bigger. And now what I can do is I can click Alt right arrow to motion track. And already it's failed. Because there's really a lot of motion blur on it. So what I can do is I can just click G to grab it, and that just does it. I can just manually motion track. It failed again, so I'm just going to okay, so it's actually doing kind of well, and it failed. And it's skewing a bit, so we're going to do that. And the track doesn't need to be perfect, but there we go. Now we've got the motion track down. So and that's just until it like clips off because of like the cropping. And now we're going to do the same thing, but for this ball right here. So we're going to find the frame where it starts. It's on this frame, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to Control click, make it a bit bigger, and we're going to do Alt right arrow. We're going to do it manually because the ball has a lot of motion blur and it's hard to track. Actually, this is tracking a lot better than the last one. And I'm going to choose that frame. Oops. I'm going to choose that frame for when it stops disappearing. So actually, I think I'm actually even going to pick that frame because that frame is it's a pretty nice distance away from my hand. So I'm kind of deliberating between this. You know, screw it. I'm going to do this frame. You don't need to be incredibly specific of when you do it. Just needs to be general. So we're going to set this up so where it has a track, wherever there's a tracking marker, we're going to replace that, and we're going to erase the ball wherever the tracking marker is. Um, but the thing is, once we finish this motion tracking, the tracking marker is still here. It's right there. So we're going to be replacing whatever is there. And to get rid of that, what we need to do, it's not the most elegant solution ever, but so, see, and we go there, we go to the frame after it's done tracking, and we're just going to drag it all the way up here. So now it's just going to be erasing something off screen, which doesn't affect it at all. So here's what it looks like. So, and now there's no more tracker in the scene. And we're going to do the same thing to it as before the ball arrives. So here's what the track looks like. And that works. And same thing with the other tracker. So let's just play this whole thing. That's great. And now we're just going to do the exact same thing, but with the throw back. I'm going to choose this frame, add a tracker, make it a bit bigger, and Alt right arrow until it fails. And the ball kind of gets sort of invisible when it's like it has this very bright backdrop where you can't really see it. But it doesn't really matter too much. It's like the track doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be generally in the correct direction. And if you screw up, it doesn't really matter that much. So I'm just kind of estimating where the ball is. I can kind of see it sort of. It's right there, I think. Okay. And I think the ball has disappeared, actually. I think the ball disappeared like somewhere around there. So there we go. Now I'm just going to do the same thing. Next frame goes all the way up there. And same thing here. So that track looks good. Same thing with this ball. So when it appears here, add a tracker, resize it, track forward. Okay, it's tracking good. Need to adjust it a little bit because it's not center on. And I'm going to choose that framework. I'm going to choose that framework to disappear. So I'm going to put it all the way up there. And this goes all the way up there. So let's play the whole thing. That looks pretty decent. So the problem with this is it knows where the ball is, but it doesn't know how much to remove. So what we need to do is we're going to hit Tab to go into the masking workspace. And right here on the first frame with this, I'm going to just left click on this, and that sets my 2D cursor right there. And I'm going to do Shift A to add a circle. So this adds a circle mask. I'm going to do S to scale it down a little, and Alt S to feather it out. So this is a good mask right here. And so now we have all this. So we're going to deselect everything, and then we're going to select all 4 segments of this circle mask. And then we're going to select the tracker. And now what we're going to do is Control P to parent it to the tracker. So now it follows the tracker. So it's going to erase everything that is within this this mask. And we're going to set that up later. So now we're just going to do the same thing with the other one. So we're going to find the first frame right here. We're going to 2D cursor, add a circle, Alt S to feather it, scale it down a bit, and parent it to the tracker. And that works. Works great. And same for the rest of them. Find the first frame. Oops. Going to 2D cursor, add a circle, Alt S, scale it down, parent to tracker. Great. Last one. First frame, set our 2D cursor, add a circle, Alt S, scale it down, and parent to tracker. So now, let's watch this through again. So, there we go. I just hit Control S to save the project. I'm going to name this VFX.blend. That's just my naming scheme, VFX, visual effects, and that's what I call my main project, my main Blender project that I do most of the compositing in. Speaking of compositing, we're about to do some. So, what we need to find is a stationary frame where there's no ball. And honestly, this looks like a great one right here. So we're just going to hit, and as you can see, this is frame 167. So if we go back to our image sequence and find frame 167, doesn't really matter which frame you use as long as there's no ball in the shot. 167, where is it? Here it is. We're going to copy it by hitting Control C and paste it right here. And we're just going to name this blank. It's my naming scheme. My naming scheme is weird, it just works for me. We're just going to call this blank. So I'm just going to drag that off screen. And now, also, this whole masking thing, I'm going to name this, I don't know, ball remove. BL for ball, remove for rem. So now what we're going to do is go to the compositing workspace. We're going to enable use nodes. We're going to switch this to cycles and switch this to GPU. And we're going to delete the render layers node. And we're going to import our image sequence. So we're going to take all this and drag it in. And it's actually registering as a single image right now. So now what we're going to do is change it to image sequence. Click this folder button right here, and this appears. And we're going to click on one of them, click A to select all of them, open image. So now we have this as an image sequence, and we're just going to feed it into the composite node. So now if we hit F12 to render an image, it renders the respective frame in this. But the thing is, it's still, the ball will be still there because this is just the image sequence. So what we're going to do is going to add a mask node, and what the mask node does is it just shows where our mask is. So I'm just going to, again, select the mask, and if you do Control-Shift-Click on it, just for an example, and zoom out a bit, it'll show where your mask is. So let's just pick a frame where the ball is in shot, like here. Yeah, there's a ball. And it should show, if I render an image, yeah, there we go. So it shows where the mask is. But you don't need to do that. It's just as an example. So now we just have a nice map of where the ball is and where the ball isn't. and that is consistent across, like if I scroll across our timeline, it's just showing where we need to erase. And I'm going to delete this viewer node. And now I'm going to add in a mix node. And going to put the mask as our factor. And now if I go back to all my files, remember that blank image we started earlier, the image called blank? I'm going to drag that in. I'm going to, now you can hook up blank to the bottom one. And now we're going to hit F12 to render out an image. And as you can see, there's no ball, even though there should be a ball. See, if I'm scrolling through my timeline and the ball is just erased. And what that is doing, what this node network is doing, is saying where the mask is. Remember this all these masks we did earlier. Where one of those masks are, replace this with this. So we're going to replace an image with a ball in it with an image with the part of an image that does not have a ball in it. So now we can render this out. So we need to just choose an output directory right here. Objects, projects. Here it is. src composite to sequence. And that's just, again, my naming scheme. Accept. And now we're going to hit Control F12 to render out our animation. And this actually might take a bit, my computer is pretty beefy, so it's getting about frame every half a second. And we're just going to wait for this to finish. It shouldn't take that long for me. There is 189 frames. You can fast forward in the video a bit actually if you want. So, just a general overview of what we're going to do next while this renders. So now we have this footage of me throwing the ball and the ball disappears. We have that footage and we're going to add in a CGI ball, a fake ball, digital ball, and we're just going to use that and we're going to just add that into the scene. And then we're just going to add some motion blur. It's really that simple. It looks like we're a bit more than half done with the render right now. And as you can see, there is no ball. The ball is completely gone. Until it appears. We're just going to add a ball in the middle of that. And you can see what our image, how the rendering is working. So if I go to the folder, it keeps saving these images. And it looks like it's almost done. It's got like 10 frames left. And there we go. It's completely done. So now we're going to delete all this compositing because we don't need that anymore. We've already done that. And we're going to take all this, the render we just did, do Control A to select it all, and drag it in. Same thing as before, we're going to change this to image sequence, hit the folder button, and we're just going to select one, click A, open image. So now we have this, and if I do Control Shift click on it, you can see that it's working. Okay, so now we're going to go into the 3D modeling. And we don't even need to use an HDRI for this to get realistic lighting, it's all we like, because the ball is so small, you're not going to notice any little lighting differences. And we also don't need to mimic the shadows too, because again, the ball is so small and there's so much motion blur, you can't even see that the shadow is there. If it was a bigger ball, we would need to set up realistic lighting, texture the ball, do all this stuff, but not this time, because it's really simple. So we're just going to hit this camera button to go into camera view. We're going to click N to open up the viewer properties panel, or whatever it's called, and go to view, lock camera to view. And we're just going to click N to get rid of it. And so now when you move around the scene, the camera will move with it. And you can just hit number pad 0 to get in and out of the camera. So now I've got this. I'm going to select the camera by right-clicking on the edge, go to the camera tab, enable background images, add image, movie, and I'm going to open up the image sequence that I just rendered out with no ball in it. Open clip. So now, if I set the alpha to 1, which makes it just a lot clearer. Now, if I play it, it's pretty choppy right now because it hasn't really loaded yet, but it is working. So this would be helpful to open up a new little window thingy and set this to timeline so you can actually see like where you are. I'm just going to hit shift left arrow to go to the beginning. And you can kind of see what the video is. And I'm just going to play this through once so it's loaded into memory, because it's not loaded into memory right now. And this actually just gives you a pretty good overview of what it's like. So now if you play it again, it'll be a lot smoother. As you can see, I'm getting 32 FPS, which is great. And so now we have this 3D scene, and we can just place anything on top of the video. Well, first of all, I know that this, it doesn't really matter too much for such a tiny ball. Again, like the ball is so tiny, like any mistakes you make it's not that hard to fix. But I know this camera has a focal length of 25 millimeters, so I'm just going to change that from 50 to 25, and that just makes it a bit more realistic. I'm going to now position this up a bit. I'm going to scale this. I just want to line it up. Scale it on the y-axis, and I'm just imitating the floor, the wall. It's not looking too realistic right now, but it doesn't really need to. If I go into there, it can kind of see what I'm doing. And there we go. So that gives us a general idea of what we need to. And just for good measure, I can go to Object Properties, Visibility, and check Shadow Catcher. And what that does is if I go into Render View mode and go to Render Properties, Film, and click Transparent, what this will do is now, if I add in, say if I add in our sphere, it'll kind of capture the shadows. It won't make that much of a difference, but it's good practice. And it gives that extra sense of realism. And it's even imitating the wall too. The wall and the floor. I think we're going to actually use this as our ball. So if we go to the last available frame, and oops, I kind of zoomed out a bit accidentally. So there we go. Now we're going to click N and uncheck lock camera to view so we can pan around a bit. This ball is looking really big, so now we're just going to click S to scale, and we're just going to generally make it about the same size as the ball, and the next frame is going to be about there, so that's where we're going to put it. Next thing to do right now is just to enable motion blur, set the shutter, because there's a lot of motion blur right here, so I'm going to set the shutter to something like 0.7, really high. So yeah, when it's rendered out, there will be some motion blur. This ball looks a bit too dark right now. It looks a bit darker than what this one is, so we're going to go to the shading workspace. Go there. Go to rendered view. I'm going to make a new material for it, and it doesn't really matter that much. If I wanted to go extra realism, I would add some subsurface scattering, but again, there's so much motion blur you can't even tell. I'm just going to lighten it up a bit to make it a bit more light and white. Looks about good. We're going to go back to modeling, and I'm going to now click W shade smooth to give it some nice good shading. So now we've got this ball. What do we do with it? Well, we need to animate it, and we could just animate it with keyframes, like animate the curve with keyframes, but a better way to do it is to go out of camera view and switch to solid view mode, because that you can see everything better, and add a curve and a Bezier curve. I'm going to now just line it up a bit by rotating it on the X and Z axes and moving it up so it can actually be seen by the camera. Okay, great. So now we've got this curve, and if we go to click tab, we can go to edit mode, and we can just manipulate this curve however we want. I'm going to, and what we want to do is we want to set this curve up to like kind of the path we want the ball to follow. So it looks like it's kind of going in that direction, so we're going to move it a bit up like that. We're going to do that, and it doesn't need to be, again, it doesn't need to be super accurate, it just needs to kind of depict the curve that the ball would take. And if we go to the point where we catch it, we can see where we catch it. So you can see that it's about there. That looks about good. And now we can use this curve to animate the ball's motion. And you can actually see, I remember when we did that, when we removed the ball, when you zoom in really close, you can kind of see where we removed the ball, but it's not too noticeable, so it's fine. Just a fun little thing. I think we're going to move this curve over a little bit more so it like actually intersects with the ball. Okay, that's a good curve. So now to make the ball actually follow this curve, we're going to select the ball and go to modifiers, add a modifier and add a curve modifier. And right here we're going to click the little eyedropper and drop it on the curve. So now what it'll do is it'll actually follow the curve. It's looking a bit weird right now, so all we need to do is just like adjust this a bit. We need to put it down a bit on the z-axis, and there we go, it's following the curve. There is some distortion that is happening with the ball, but it's not too much, so it's not a big deal. And again, it's not even noticeable because of we'll be having so much motion blur. It'll be looking like this. So right here I'm going to click I and then O to add a keyframe for location and rotation. Oops. And then we're going to find the frame where it's like there, and then we're going to grab it on the y-axis right there, and IO again for location and rotation. So now it's following the curve. So now if we just play that, it's doing the right thing. But the issue right here is, as you can see, it's like the way it moves, it's kind of, it doesn't follow the correct curve, like the way a ball would be thrown. As you can see, it's like it starts off really fast, slows down towards the middle, and then goes really fast. and that's not how a ball is thrown. So what we're going to do is we're going to, actually, what do we want to do here? So I would usually do this with 2 monitors, but I can't really do that because I'm only screen recording 1 monitor. So I'm going to just split this view right here and change this to a graph editor. And I'm just going to press it down a little like that. And you can see the curve in which the ball moves in. It's right here. So what we want to do is we want to give it a bit of momentum when it starts. And then we're going to give it a bit of momentum when it finishes. Oops. Let's select the green thing. Okay, there we go. We need to give it a curve kind of like that. So it starts off fast, and then it slows down. Oops, I accidentally did the opposite. It starts off slow and then speeds up. I think that's a bit dramatic, so if we take this up a bit, maybe a bit more. I think that's pretty realistic, so take a look at it. So that's a pretty good animation. And we just need to do the same exact thing for the second one. So we're going to just delete that. But as you would probably guess, we set the ball to go along this curve. But the thing is, like, the ball, when it's thrown the second time, it doesn't follow the exact same curve. It goes like this. So we need to move this curve for the second one. So you could do some weird shape keys, but what I found is the easiest is to go into edit mode and select one of these and doing Control H and click hook to new object. And so now we have this empty and we can just move it around and we can keyframe that. And we're just going to do the same thing for the other one. Control H, hook to new object. And these are a bit big, so I'm just going to scale this down to like 0.1, maybe like 0.2. That looks good. So just so it doesn't get in our way. So now we can move this and we can rotate it, and it'll act just like a curve. So we're going to kind of animate this curve. So we're going to see where the throw finishes, and so now we're going to add in, for both of these, we're going to select both of them, an I/O to keyframe the location and rotation. And we're going to find the point where this disappears. That's about good. And so now we're going to grab this to about there. Then I/O for location, rotation, keyframe. And so now, if we go to the beginning, we throw it, and that's going to move. And that's exactly what we want. And so it's the same thing with this. So we're going to grab this to about there, I/O. Oops. And this is not actually a realistic curve of how a ball would look, so I'm gonna just rotate that a bit. Maybe like that. And I/O again for location rotation. And the 2 keyframes that we just added are in 2 separate places. They're right here and right here. So we're just gonna drag this keyframe right over there on top of the other one. So now, if I play this, you can see what's happening. And now the curve is moving to adjust for where the second shot is going to be. That works. Oh damn, we've already been recording for like 44 minutes. This is going to be a fun tutorial. So now, again, we need to do the same thing. We need to animate this ball. So we're going to do I for O for location rotation. And then we're going to find where it disappears. Grab it on the y-axis to about there. I-O for location rotation. Well, let's just play this. That looks about good. And don't worry about this middle section where it's... Don't worry about the parts where it's still visible, like right here where it shouldn't be visible. We can take care of that a bit later. So now we're going to do the same thing with the graph editor. We're going to split our view. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. We're going to split our view and go to graph editor. Going to flatten it out a bit, make it a bit more manageable, and see where this green thing is. This green thing is what we want. So we're going to give it a, oops. We don't want the early stuff to be affected at all. So we want to get it to get a bit of a head start. Like, is it like that? I'm pretty sure. And that looks like a pretty good graph. So it starts off a bit faster and then starts to bottom out. And I'm getting notifications from Instagram. I do not care, Instagram. Hi, Instagram. I'm going to change this back to the timeline and move this down a bit. So now I've got some pretty realistic motion. Got that completely animated. Okay, so we don't want the ball visible like right here, like in the middle, in this middle part. So what we're going to do, same thing with the masks, is we're going to take this and grab it in a random direction. I'm doing it on the y-axis, and then I-O, so it just goes off frame right there. Same thing with before, grab it on the y-axis, off frame, I-O, grab Y, I-O, Y, I-O. So now, this actually, we can probably just render this out pretty soon. And if we disable overlays, oh, actually we can't do that. If we go to rendered view mode, and if we make it so we can't see the curve, or the empty, where's empty? There we go. It's actually looking pretty realistic. Yeah, looks great. We don't have any motion blur, but that will appear in the final render. So I'll show you what I mean. So I'm gonna pick a nice visible spot like right here, hit F12 to render an image, and as you can see, where'd it go? Oh, okay, we don't have the compositing set up. That's why it doesn't appear. But there will be motion blur in the final one. But this is very simple compositing that we're doing right here. We're going to delete the viewer node, add an alpha, I don't know how to spell alpha, add an alpha over node, put it right there, add a render layers mode, not mode, we're going to add a render layers node, and hook it over right there, F12, and here's the example I was making. Once it's rendered out, as you can see, there is plenty of motion blur. I don't have any render settings set up, so the render is taking a long time. Don't worry, it won't take this long per frame. That is some nice motion blur. Okay. Well, now we're going to fix that issue where the render takes absolutely forever. We're going to set this to 8 samples. Since we're rendering with our GPU, we're going to set the performance to 256 by 256 pixels. That's not actually the resolution of the image. It's still 1920 by 1080, but this just makes it render faster. And that's basically all we need. I'm just trying to think of if we need anything else. One thing we could do is render the render layers and the image sequence separately, so we could do adjustments later. But that's like we don't really need to do that now. I mean, we don't. It's like with this shot, the ball is just white, so I don't think we would need to do that. So actually, I think right now we can just completely render this out. So I'm going to choose an output directory. There you go. This is the first time I've ever done something successfully in one take. I might be able to, I might bite my words after this because, like, the tutorial isn't done yet, but usually I'm awful at talking, and trying to do something in one take is not good. We're going to do renders, new folder, cycles 1, again, it's my naming scheme. I'm going to save this. I have not saved in a while. Always save your projects. I have more than once lost a lot of work on projects that I didn't save. Let's hope that doesn't happen. I'm just going to render out an image to make sure this is all good. Yeah, there we go. Even at 8 samples, the noise isn't too noticeable. Yeah, and that's basically it. So now we just need to render this out. So we've chosen I really hope I didn't forget anything. Control F12 to render the animation, and yeah, it looks like it's rendering great. We're getting about a frame every 2 seconds, so I will just check back in with you once the render is completed. Okay, this is completely done rendering, so I'm just going to navigate over to the folder where I rendered it out. I'm actually opening up Resolve right now, DaVinci Resolve, so I can actually see the image sequence and see how the render turned out. And it should pop up here in a second. There it goes. I'm going to create a new project and go to the editing, to the edit, whatever it's called, edit workspace, and going to select all of these and drag it into our media pool. Also, I've made this mistake before. Always remember to go to the clip attribute and set it to whatever frame you shot it at. So I shot it at 29.97 frames per second, and I'm just going to drag that into our timeline. And so now the moment of truth. Hey, it looks good. So now you can make a viral video or something, or you can just export it as you can export it to your location of choice. Put this as an MP4, add to render queue, start render, and now you will have a video file. Where is it? And yeah, now you have a video file that you can upload to YouTube or do whatever you want with. Or what you could do is you could make it super fancy and make it a looping animation. That would be fun. But that's a challenge for another day. Thanks for watching this tutorial. Goodbye.